What happened to my son doesn't discriminate. I don't care who you are, where you come from, you can be affected.
You don't care about stealing and robbing or whatever you have to do to get your next fix. It's so scary thinking about it now that I was that person.
I was born and raised in an affluent neighborhood in Northern Virginia. Good school in Fairfax County. I had every opportunity afforded to me. I've been in recovery for 9 years.
Communities are beginning to mobilize with school systems, with community organizations, with nonprofits, with first responders. A lot of people finally coming together and saying, this is here, this is real, we're not going to avoid it anymore, we're not going to act like it's not happening. So now what do we do about it?
The complex problem of opioid abuse has reached epidemic proportions throughout the United States. Death from opioid and heroin overdoses now outpace death by car accidents. This crisis can be found anywhere, in small towns, large cities, and right here in Fairfax County. And the problem is, most people think substance abuse addiction will never happen to them.
Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to inject heroin. Nobody does that. We've seen people become addicted just by taking one pill.
Opioids are a group of chemicals often used for medicinal purposes to relieve pain. Prescription opioid medications include Oxycontin, Vicodin, codeine, morphine, methadone, and fentanyl. These are very powerful drugs and need to be taken under the supervision of a healthcare provider. You may be wondering, if these drugs are prescribed by a doctor, how can they be bad? When an opioid is prescribed by a doctor and taken as directed, it can be effective for pain relief. But when people abuse prescription opioids, share them with friends, or try them just for kicks, there can be serious consequences. When the pills are no longer available and people have become dependent upon them, they can turn to other substances like heroin or even more deadly, fentanyl. The misuse of these powerful drugs mess with your body and brain.
Oftentimes, one of the things you see with opioids is you get the high effect, the relaxation effect. It works on the mu receptors in the brain. And what happens, that releases endorphins and releases more dopamine. And when you have that happen, you get happy, you get high.
If you go into a meeting or rehab, you'll see every type of person there. You'll see the overachiever, the class clown, the workaholic dad, stay-at-home mom, the teenager that never grew up.
Addiction is defined as a chronic, relapsing brain disease that is characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use, despite harmful consequences. It is considered a brain disease because drugs change the brain. They change its structure and how it works. These brain changes can be long-lasting and can lead to many harmful, often self-destructive behaviors. Addiction to prescription painkillers can occur very quickly. Some people build up a tolerance, and they need more of the drug to give them the relief or high feeling they first experienced. When the drug runs out, they can start to feel the unpleasant symptoms of withdrawal.
The withdrawal symptoms that you get are the body aches. You get the feeling of a bad flu. You start feeling really ill, and what happens is you need more of it. When you get to a point where the tolerance has built up, where you need more and more and more, and you're not using it for its intended effect, which is pain control, but rather for the euphoric effect, now you've gone into the addictive mode, and it's very difficult to come off that medication, which means now you're going to try and find others. If you don't have any Oxycontin at home, you're going to go out on the street to try and find something.
When you're in this addiction, you don't understand the severity of it because you do anything to get it. It's like nothing else exists.
You're seeing doctors prescribing pills that are lasting 90 days. You're keeping a person on a pill for a long period of time where the body is going to say, this is a great feeling and I need it.
4 of 5 individuals who are addicted to heroin began their addiction with the use of prescription opioids. Just thinking about the Center for Disease Control statistics, one overdose across the country in every 19 minutes. So during the course of our segment, sadly, there's going to be at least one death.
The human brain is the most complex organ in the body. It controls necessary functions to keep us alive by telling our heart to beat, our lungs to breathe, and our body to sleep. When drugs are introduced to the brain, those chemical properties interfere with important brain functions, such as decision-making, the ability to learn and process information, to react quickly and respond appropriately to stressful situations, and to regulate behavior. Opioid drugs slow breathing and heart rate, which can reduce the amount of oxygen that reaches the brain. Too much of an opioid suppresses breathing, which becomes slower and slower and eventually stops. What kills people in opioid overdoses is the lack of oxygen. Heroin abuse has been shown to cause deterioration of white matter in the brain. Over time, drug abuse can actually alter brain chemistry.
Studies have been done to show that individuals who have a substance use disorder and are addicted, their brain is different than someone who is non-addicted. So, I mean, really it is a genetic illness.
When my brother was about 15 years old, we found out he was addicted to intravenous heroin. He wanted to deny it for a long time, but once he realized the truly disastrous effect that drugs were having in his life, he was already addicted, and that demon, if you will, had already kind of taken over. He spent cumulatively about 2 years in treatment, but each time the heroin would just get its claws into him again because his brain chemistry had been permanently altered.
The physical dependence to these type of addictive substances becomes a vicious cycle. The body builds up a tolerance for the drugs, which requires a higher and higher dosage to get the same pleasing effect, whether that be a high or pain relief. In addition to a physical dependence, drugs rewire brain function. The reward center in our brain is critical to our existence. When this reward area is activated, the brain takes note that something important is happening, which needs to be remembered. It teaches us to repeat the action that just occurred. Drugs stimulate the reward area, and the brain is tricked into thinking these addictive substances are necessary. This brain hijack increases the likelihood of repeated use and abuse.
In the midbrain, you have a list, essentially, of survival mechanisms. So eat, sleep, procreate, these are all the things that we need to do to survive. What addiction does is it inserts that drug into that list of survival mechanisms. It actually puts it at the top. So that's why Christopher, who was this happy, healthy 15-year-old, started wasting away in front of us, because his brain was actually telling him, screaming at him, that heroin was even more important than food. So it sounds dramatic, but he really just became a zombie, and that was the only thing his brain could think about.
I needed to go to detox center to help me. I went in there, it was about 19 days. The first 3 days were so difficult because, you know, I was a heroin addict for about 3 years at that point. So I couldn't stop without help. And at detox, they have nurses that kind of help you and monitor you.
When people try drugs, sometimes they can try it and they won't immediately get addicted or have negative consequences, and then some people, they'll try a drug and it instantly takes them down.
Before I knew it, I was shooting heroin every single day. It was like nothing that I had ever experienced before. It was the best feeling that I'd ever had in my life, and it destroyed me. It was like I blinked. I had totaled my brand new car. I lost my place to live. I had OD'd twice. I had resuscitated 3 of my friends who almost died in my arms. I was dying completely. I didn't know who I was anymore, and I didn't know how it happened.
Addiction is unpredictable, difficult to overcome, and can ultimately lead to overdose and death. So why would anyone want to take the risk? Research indicates that adolescents and young adults are more vulnerable to substance misuse and abuse because brain development isn't complete until around 25. So it's almost natural for a young person to take more risks in areas that impact safety and wellness. The brain region responsible for adult behaviors, like impulse control, delay of reward, and extended reasoning, is the last part to mature. This poses a greater risk for young people to experiment with drugs and alcohol.
Many kids, young adults and older adults, actually will go through medicine cabinets and take pills, opiates, non-opiates, etc. So people will have what's called farm parties where we all bring pills from our medicine cabinets, we pour them in a bowl, we take whatever. You know, these are very risky behaviors. One, because you're taking pills you're not prescribed to take, but two, you have no idea what you're taking. So it's extremely, extremely scary.
I have experimented with every single drug almost made, everywhere from cocaine to meth to PCP to heroin. Though heroin came later in life, it was my major downfall where I almost lost my life.
And one risky decision can be the gateway to another.
Christopher felt like he was invincible. Everybody loved him, but that kind of impulsive, fun-seeking nature led him to try some drugs. Once he had tried that one time, just dragged him down almost instantly.
As a teen, you're most likely to look to your peers for acceptance, and you may also feel the pressure to fit in. Peer pressure is not always negative. Healthy peer pressure occurs when you surround yourself with positive friendships and engage in activities that help you to mature. For example, you and your friends might volunteer to feed the homeless or tutor younger students. You might take positive risks that help you to strive for a goal, such as trying out for a sport or a role in a play. But when you feel pressured to do something that goes against your best judgment and your value system, that is negative peer pressure, which can sometimes be difficult to handle.
I started using marijuana at the age of 10 because I was lonely and disaffected by my peers. I always felt separate or different from other kids my age. The neighbor's kid approached me and he said, "Hey, do you want to go get high?" And all I heard was, "Why don't you come with me? Let's hang out and do something." You know, so I did that, and I got in trouble the very first time I got high, and that didn't deter me. You know, so I don't know how long I've had substance use disorder. I don't know how long I've had the disease of addiction. But right there from the very first time, I had consequences, and that did not deter me, which is symptomatic of the disease.
For me, very similar to other people. I think just you're finding your way in middle school and high school, seeing where you kind of fit in, where you belong, or you don't know yet. Sometimes it seems like everyone else knows where they fit in, so you're thinking about yourself, what do I do? And I guess while people are finding their way, you know, they experiment, drinking, you know, smoking pot, doing harder drugs, even opioids today, just to loosen up a little bit. I found out with myself that I was just, maybe just some lack of direction. I guess I just hung out with people that weren't doing anything either.
I got addicted to drugs when I was 12 years old. I started using drugs and alcohol. I was uncomfortable. I didn't really know where to fit in. You know, I was changing groups of friends. I was kind of looking for somewhere to belong. And I ended up falling into the wrong group of people.
If a friend comes to you and tries to get you to do something that you do not want to do, that is not your friend. Whether you want to report it to the school, your school resource officer, or your parent, or you want to keep it to yourself, that's fine. Just do not do that drug, because whatever drug you decide to do, it's just going to lead to the wrong path that you want to take in life.
Addiction impacts many lives in many ways. For the user, his or her life can become consumed by relapse and recovery for years.
I've been in recovery for 9 years, and what that means for me is I haven't used any drugs, including alcohol, in that time. And as a result of that, my life has gotten a whole lot better.
My best friend just passed away from an overdose, you know, and I have to fight every single day the temptation, because when I have a bad day, it's those times where you want to get high because you want to be numb, because you don't want to think about it, but that's the very thing that just killed your best friend, you know? And it's sick. It is so sick.
The emotional roller coaster addiction places upon families and friends can be exhausting. And when a loved one dies of an overdose, so many hopes and dreams are shattered.
Once they're gone, there's an emptiness that will never be filled. And my son overdosed and died on the 9th, February the 9th. He would have been 21, February the 17th. You just want to shake him up and say, you had your whole life. And if you could have beat this, could you imagine how many people he could have helped?
I have been in and out of jail since 15 years old. I've been in and out of rehab since 16 years old.
It pretty much devastated us financially. And I mean, we took out loans, we borrowed, we just did whatever. We were always robbing Peter to pay Paul to make ends meet. But when it came to things that I felt would possibly get her help, I just had to find a way to do that.
In addition to the personal and family impacts, drug addiction places an economic burden on our community by straining our police departments, emergency medical services, mental health services, and even our business community.
You don't care about stealing and robbing or whatever you have to do to get your next fix.
Unfortunately, we have addresses that we go to all the time. I've seen way too many overdoses that are occurring. When they wake up, you say to them, hey man, you died and we got you back. And some of them go, yeah, okay, that's cool. And I think that some of them feel, you got me up, I'm fine, I'll be all right, I can kick this, I can beat this. Or some of them are so addicted to it that they don't care. Okay, if I die, I die. Which we have to change that mentality.
Addiction knows no demographics. It is equal opportunity destroyer in terms of socioeconomic, cultural, age, gender. It's just pervasive, so it can happen to anyone.
Getting dealers off the street and getting help for those addicted is a top priority in Fairfax County.
We are taking a more stringent effort in targeting dealers. We're doing that through the Attorney General and the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. We also use our federal partners, the FBI and DEA. We use the U.S. Attorney's Office to do more powerful prosecution of the dealers. With the users, we're trying to reach out to them to try to get them into rehab services. That's the partnership that we have with Community Services. So we are trying everything possible to try to help the addict, beat the addiction, and target the dealers to ensure that they go to jail and they stay in jail.
Recovering from addiction is a tough road, but here in Fairfax County, there are many resources available. And while the police are here to enforce the laws, they also partner with the Community Services Board and other agencies to provide assistance to those suffering from addiction.
We had a case where we knew a boyfriend and a girlfriend were going to Washington, D.C. to pick up heroin. And when they came back, we had our street crimes unit conduct a traffic stop for us. We know what happened tonight. You want to tell me what happened tonight?
I have something else to tell you first. I'm 2 months pregnant.
All right, I'm going to give you two options here. You had heroin on you. You were going to sell it. You're looking at going to jail for a long period of time. You can decide to go to jail, or I can get you into rehab and get you help if you choose that option. What do you want to do?
I need help.
I can make that call. And here you have a person that's pregnant, 2 months, and she's still shooting heroin. Could we have taken her to jail? Absolutely, we could have. Is that the right thing to do? To us, it wasn't. So with the partnership, again, that we have formed with Community Services, we contacted them, we got her into rehab the next day.
I've had instances where people are just so desperate for help and crying for the help that they need. I've called the CSB directly and said, hey, can you guys come here now?
I always like to say that getting arrested actually saved my life, and I'm grateful for it. My probation officer instructed me to go get an evaluation with the Fairfax County Community Services Board. So I went in there and was evaluated and went to a 90-day treatment program with the county, and then went to a 10-month supervised sober living environment.
Knowing the facts is the best way to combat addiction. First, do not take any medications that are not prescribed to you. And if you have an opioid prescription from a doctor, only take it as directed.
Parents and students need to realize that these drugs are safe as they're prescribed, but they're not safe to be a recreational fun drug. That's not their purpose.
Don't share medications. Not only is that illegal, but more importantly, you don't know how your prescription will affect someone else.
I can take 2 Percocet right now and have no issue. You can take 2 Percocet right now and you're like, I need more. So there's really no way of telling who is going to become addicted, who is going to just be tolerant of the drug.
And finally, don't order any type of drug off the internet.
You don't have to leave your couch anymore. From your cell phone, you can order heroin directly to your front door. When you dabble into heroin, you just have no clue. You just have no idea what you're buying. One bag is different from the next. The strength is different. The cutting agents are different. And so this is why so many people are now dying from fentanyl.
One of the new threats that we're seeing now is kids going onto the internet and ordering fentanyl and carfentanil, which are synthetic opiates, synthetic heroin, and they're very powerful. The fentanyl is 50 times more powerful than heroin or morphine, where the carfentanil is 100 times more powerful than the morphine. You're seeing a drug that's designed for an elephant. Carfentanil is designed for elephants, for an animal that size, and you're seeing 16-year-old kids putting it into the human body.
Scary stuff, right? There are steps you can take to help prevent drug addiction. Take a look in your medicine cabinet.
The biggest piece in prevention is to make sure that any narcotic pain medicine, any narcotics that you may have in your house, whether it's Xanax, whether it's Percocet, need to be under your careful watch. If you're taking Ambien to go to bed at night to help you sleep, that needs to be locked up. All your narcotic medication needs to be locked up. Your kids should not know where they are.
Safe medication disposal is very important. There are Operation Medicine Cabinet cleanouts throughout the community. Another means of safe medication disposal is to utilize one of these medication kits. You open it, you place the unused medications in the pouch. It can hold up to 45 pills. You fill halfway with warm tap water. You wait 30 seconds. You gently shake and seal, and then you throw it away with your regular garbage. And even if I wanted to try to take your medications, I couldn't because they've been destroyed with this. This can also hold liquids or patches. Sometimes pain patches are prescribed to both humans and animals, and people may use those in an attempt to get high, but you can put those in this bag as well, and then just simply discard it when you're done.
So the Chris Atwood Foundation is a nonprofit organization that my family and I started in memory of Christopher to try to fill in some of the gaps that my family had slipped through, and also to try to decrease the stigma of this disease that is a big part of what keeps people from asking for help.
In addition to bringing the disease of addiction out from the shadows, the Chris Atwood Foundation conducts overdose reversal training for people who live with someone addicted to opioid painkillers or heroin.
We teach them how to recognize an overdose and then respond to it and hopefully reverse it.
Ginny and her family successfully lobbied the state of Virginia to allow individuals access to a medication called naloxone, also known as the brand name Narcan. It is a life-saving antidote which rapidly reverses an opioid overdose.
There is a standing order in Virginia now for naloxone, basically just a blanket prescription for everybody, and you can go into a pharmacy and ask for it. A lot of people don't think that they need naloxone until it's too late. And I'm the person who came home and found Christopher the day that he died, and I didn't have it. I had actually tried to get it and couldn't, because at that point it was harder to get your hands on, but I know what it's like to be in a situation where you need it and don't have it, and nobody ever thinks that that's gonna happen to them. Now I beg everyone to please carry it.
Project Revive is a program throughout Virginia that trains individuals on what to do in an overdose situation, how to administer naloxone, and what to do afterwards. Each attendee receives a free Revive kit, which includes all the supplies needed to administer naloxone. Here in Fairfax County, the Community Services Board has partnered with the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services and the Chris Atwood Foundation to launch Project Revive. Having open and honest discussions about drugs and substance abuse can be uncomfortable, but keeping open lines of communication between you and your child is essential for prevention and intervention when problems arise. Christopher Bennett struggled with substance abuse in high school. He now runs Encore, a successful outpatient program that focuses on substance use and co-occurring mental health disorders for young adults.
I think the kind of things that we're really seeing not only right now but historically are young adults who are really struggling not only with the use of substances but also the reasons why they've begun to use the substances in the first place. With young people, especially in Northern Virginia, what we see a ton of is anxiety. There's a lot of expectation, whether placed directly on the young person or just perceived. We also see a lot of depression. When we look at people who are using substances, our assumption is there's always something else going on.
In working with clients to understand their underlying problem with substance abuse, Chris believes open communication is essential.
There's been a movement in the last couple of years, which is a really interesting move, and it's called drugs over dinner. And it's basically this idea that there's a really uncomfortable topic, which is drug use, and let's basically take the opportunity while we're having family dinner to talk about drugs. When lines of communication are open, where you can have honest, empathic, compassionate, understanding conversations with a teen or an adolescent, they will be open and honest with you.
Within our school system, there are counselors, psychologists, as well as social workers to talk with. They can link students and families to therapeutic resources outside of the school system, like the Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board. You can call or simply walk into the Merrifield Center from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Recovery instilled in me a value system I never got to develop because I was always under the influence of chemicals at an early age. I was able to practice, different values like honesty and integrity and humility and acceptance. And I was able to use my experience to help other people. I reached out to people in the recovery community. I got mentorship from various peers. And people that had been there before me, and they made it a safe and welcoming place for me. I never felt like I had fit in anywhere else prior to that.
How do you deal with, my family, a divorced family or a abusive father or things like that? But then when I went to rehab, thank God they had that conversation. And how I stayed clean for the last 12 years is just kind of opening up that conversation. We have groups when we talk about our family of origin. A lot of people come from alcoholic, addictive homes. It's not abnormal. You're not a bad person because of where you come from. So so you don't have to carry that shame and guilt.
You have to find what makes you whole instead of filling it with drugs and alcohol. What rehab did for me, it opened my eyes. Learning how to love and respect yourself is getting clean and sober.
You should know there is hope, there is help, and the body, the mind, they're all capable of healing. But it doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it requires going out and seeking out the help that you need.
You are not alone in this opioid and heroin prevention conversation. There are resources online, within FCPS, and in your community. For more information on drug prevention and intervention locally in Fairfax County, please visit these websites. The Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board provides services to people of all ages who have substance abuse disorders, mental illness, and much more. For more information about the opioid crisis and drug addiction nationally, please visit these websites.